We're going to add another tool to our toolbox of solving systems of equations. Today's is called substitution. Now, I want to talk briefly about what the word substitution means and how we use it in mathematics before we use it to solve systems of equations. When we substitute, or a substitution is replacing one thing with another. You might have seen that when you were making some recipes and you switched one ingredient out for another, or maybe a substitute teacher or something like that. In mathematics, we are very strict with our substitutions. This symbol right here, the equal sign, tells us what we are allowed to substitute. If one thing is equal to another, then we can substitute those anytime we want. If they are not equal to each other, then we are not allowed to substitute. They have to be exactly the same thing in order to switch them out. And that's what the equal sign tells us right here. Now, on this one, you've seen that x equals 5, and you've taken things like this and plugged them in before in the past probably. So x can be replaced by the value of 5, and we're going to do that down here to solve our systems of equations. That gives us 3 times 5 plus 4y equals 23. 3 times 5 is 15. And we're going to solve this equation now just like we've done in the past. We'll subtract 15 from both sides. That gives us 4y equals 8. And we'll divide by 4 to eliminate that. And that gives us y equals 2. Okay, when we are finished, we need a value for x and y. We just found our y value, which was 2. And we started with the 5 as our x value. So we know that our x value is 5. We don't have to do any more work, and we're finished with this one. So this is our solution to that system of equations. Right here you'll notice that we don't have our x equals or y equals. We don't know the value for either one of those. However, we can still do a substitution. I know that y equals x minus 2. So I'm going to switch that out. In place of y, I'm going to write x minus 2. And I'm going to do that in our other equation right up here. That gives me x plus 4, but instead of writing y in parentheses, I'm going to write x minus 2. So I am now replaced this y value with that because they are equal to each other. The y is equal to that. And over here we have 17. We're going to solve this starting with the distributive property. That gives us x plus 4x minus 8 equals 17. Add 8 to both sides to get that. We get x plus 4x equals 25. Let's combine these like terms to get 5x equals 25 and finish this out by dividing by 5 to get x equals 5. Okay, we need an x and a y value, but I don't have the y value yet. So we're going to take this and we're going to substitute it like we did in the last equation. Now that I know that x equals 5, I can put it back into these equations. And this one looks a little bit easier. It doesn't matter which one you plug it into, but I'm going to choose that one because it's a bit simpler. So we get y equals, our x value we now know is 5. So I'm going to write that as 5 minus 2. That gives us y equals 3, and we now have a value for y, so we're finished with this one. This last one I wanted to show you because we don't have x equals something like we did in the first, or y equals something like we did in the second. I'm not ready to do a substitution, so I need to solve for either an x or a y in one of these equations. This x looks like it's going to be the easiest to solve for. It doesn't matter which one you choose to isolate, but I'm going to choose the one that looks easiest for me. So let's isolate this x by adding 2y to both sides. That will give me x equals 2y minus 4, and we are now ready to substitute this 2y minus 4 in place of x. So we can go ahead and do that. Now, one thing that you need to be very careful of with this, if that came from this bottom equation right here, when we substitute, we need to substitute it back into the other equation, the top one right there. So that gives me 11 times, and in place of x, I'm going to write 2y minus 4. 2y minus 4 minus 7y equals negative 14. Distribute that 11, we get 22y minus 4 minus 7y equals negative 14. Let's add that 4 to get it to the other side. That'll give me 22y minus 7y equals negative 10. And we divide or combine these like terms, we get 15y equals negative 10, and then we'll divide by 15 to get y equals, and this simplifies to negative 2/3. Okay, we now have our y value. Let's plug it back in to solve for our x value. So I'm going to put it into here. That gives me x minus 2 times negative 2/3 equals negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 2/3 is positive 4/3. So we get x plus 4/3 equals negative 4. We'll subtract that 4/3. And we get x. 4 is 12/3. So we have negative 12/3 minus 4/3. That gives us negative 16/3. And that's our value for x. So negative 16/3. We now have both the values right here. Negative 16/3 is our x value, and our y value is negative 2/3. And we are finished with this one. So remember, if you do not have an x equals or y equals, you can solve for it. If you do, you can just substitute it in. And if you have a value, it shortens our work because we don't have to go plug it back in. We just knew the value to start with. So depending on the situation, you might have to do a little bit more or a little bit less work. Thank you.